Are you making your video on your mobile app shoppable? Are you using something like the Zara store app where I can nominate my favorite 3 shops where you'll make the inventory available to me if I click and collect in an hour? And that then bleeds into, at the end, am I using something like Aftership or Quiver to make sure I'm offering you a slow delivery, or make sure that I'm giving you step by step your product is 5 steps away, much as less as just before that we talked about, am I using an AR fitting tool? Am I using, body buddies? Am I using video? Am I using live streaming from the conversion consideration set perspective? So all of these little but significant components need to be bolted onto these systems. And I think I see what's happening to sort of round up what's probably a really long response to your question, yeah, but is that these amorphous e-com platforms can't quite keep up.
Well,
And we're seeing that's it's platform play versus best of breed, right? It's always been the way, and right now platform is holding a lot of retailers back.
For me, this is super interesting because on the one hand, you have this tech giant, Amazon, building its own tech and implementing that into physical environments. And some retailers may look overwhelmed. And I noticed from your Twitter feed, there was a great quote from Reggie Schultz, from the CEO of JD Sports, saying, "Don't do code, we do stores and customer experience. Let the tech companies do the code." And you gave that one a high five. And that resonated with me when I saw it, because this is an overwhelming level of capability for a retailer to try and take on and build. And I think I can't remember how many applications you just referenced in that in that couple of minutes, but there's a lot in that stack, and it kind of leads me into ask you a little bit more about that, of how do you build that kind of best of breed versus flexible components? How do retailers even start thinking about this?
Well, I mean, I've been doing this, I hesitate to admit, over 25 years. And, just at the time when sort of POS was moving from clients, or moving to client server, and then subsequently we've moved it up to the cloud. If you're at the bleeding edge, there are some retailers that have 37-year-old POSes who shall remain unnamed, and they are really proving huge barriers to innovation. So we're talking the e-com platform now kind of taking the place of the POS platform in stores and becoming the barrier to innovation. What I'm and back then it was all best of breed. I want best of breed everything, and then they realized they couldn't sew it all together. And then you had Oracle, SAP, Microsoft, Salesforce come in and say, well, you're buying your databases off of us. You're buying, your IBM X, whatever it might be. Why not? I've got some applications. We've got all the money to throw at verticalizing this, buying up all of these vertical applications and locking you in. And so retailers at that time, I think, through the 90s and the early noughties were like, yeah, all right, I'll have a bit of SAP. I'll have a bit of, and they were quite happy at that time, because I think the pace of innovation, the pace of changing consumer demand hadn't become turbocharged by digital quite as much then. And so they were in a position where they could say, yeah, 3 to 5 years for ROI, that's fine, I'll take that. And it's just sped up. So what I'm seeing now is a little bit of a hybrid, where they have got these systems of record that are owned by the big platform, big tech players. And I always say omni-channel should be 3 systems of main record, and that should be as near real time for all of them. Where's your stock? And you don't necessarily need to know where it is at that moment, just when it moves.
Yep.
I want to know when it moves. If it's gone from a warehouse to a store, or it's on a truck, or I've handed it to a customer. Those are the main points that you need to know where it is. So that's stock/inventory. Then you need to know who your customers are. However you do that, you might need a loyalty scheme, might not. And 3, you need to know what you're selling, and that might be sales and orders. And so we've seen again, one of the big ones, people sorted out their POS systems, then they put in e-com systems, they were doing telematics in the background, maybe 10, 15 years ago, order management. when I was at IDC. It was I need an order management system. I need to do click and collect. I need to bolt my store systems onto my e-commerce systems. And now you're trying to get retailers kind of going for, sales and orders coming from one stock pool, and
Yeah.
dynamic orchestration and predictive analytics, where to keep my stock, for example. So they still need those three systems of record, right? But what's emerging on top from a best of breed perspective, I would say, maybe I'm going to sound like I've drunk the Kool-Aid, but the best iteration of this I've seen so far is composable commerce. Throw a few buzzwords at you there. And, I think it's typified by the work that's being done by the Mac Alliance. So I work quite closely with a native mobile app firm called POC Commerce. They would hate me if I didn't actually name them, who onboarded to the Mac Alliance in 2021. So I got to look under the covers and see what the Mac Alliance needed for this vendor to join this members association. And they literally have to show their code. They have to work on blueprints, integration, and the Mac Alliance essentially stands for, and then I'll sort of hopefully finish answering your question in terms of having that platform systems of record, but hot swappable composable components on the top from a customer facing perspective that gives you that agility, is that they are all microservices, written in microservices with API first, cloud native and headless capabilities. So that's what the Mac stands for. And I do appreciate that the Mac Alliance doesn't just go, yeah, give us subscription money, we'll slap your logo and stuff. You have to go through quite a rigorous assessment process with the existing members on their technical council. And Google's only just been onboarded, for example. Google has only just joined the Mac Alliance. I think companies like Salesforce and Oracle will struggle to prove that they can join the Mac Alliance. And that's a good test. So whether something is Mac enabled and allows that level of composability on the front end while you manage the systems of record on the back end, I think is the happy medium that we're converging towards now.
Okay, so I suppose you could kind of I've got to simplify it for my own understanding a bit here. So it's kind of like those systems of record. There are foundations, and they're the bits that stay constant, and then you can use, or retailers can then build experiences using composable elements to bring that experience to life for the customer, and that's how they can access the technology and also differentiate through the mix of technology that's right for them and their customer. If I've understood what you're saying correctly.
Yeah, exactly that. Thank you for simplifying it for me. Absolutely. No, you're absolutely right. That's exactly how it should work, I think. It was interesting, that Reggie Schultz quote. He actually started off by saying, it took them, they were back and forth with their e-com provider about whether or not they needed a persistent basket. It's questions like that take too long to answer. Whereas if you're evaluating a new e-com platform, you can ask that question of 3 or 4 different Mac enabled providers and get the answer, and choose the answer that best suits you, because you're the retailer. You don't necessarily know what a persistent basket means, but if they can explain to you what it means, and your customer, and the way they shop, and what kind of business model, operating model you want to create online, then you can meet in the middle. So it makes those kinds of conversations a little bit clearer, a little bit easier. All of the big platform guys will make sure that they have an API layer that you can use and hook these things into. But it's things like dynamic search. It's things like, if I want to just swap out. So an unnamed retailer is currently migrating from ATG, which was bought by IBM years ago, and is unsupported. It's no longer supported. They're running their entire e-com business, and they're a former catalogue business. They don't actually have that many stores on something that's end of life, something that's no longer supported, simply because the operational risk of swapping that out right now is too big. So the idea is that they could move to, I try and be fair, you've got Shopify, BigCommerce, Fluent Commerce, all of these other e-commerce Mac-enabled systems of e-commerce systems, more quickly, more easily, without disrupting necessarily the plumbing underneath, the systems of record underneath, and having more business focused and outcome focused conversations, rather than getting mired in technical diagrams and months, let alone years, to seeing returns and some
And
value. You can work in that incremental sort of
as a
way
question,
of getting
as a
quick
question in that
wins.
area, Maya, you know, I've often heard people speak of the desire to make data-driven decisions based on the 360-degree view of the customer, and you've mentioned that earlier. Um, do you feel like the knowledge and education is in the industry to leverage the potential of the tech that is available? And if not, what would you do about it, or what do you think can be done about it?
That's a really good question, Gare. One large UK department store has only just taken on a head of customer data. Only just.
Yep.
Has only just launched a loyalty scheme. You can probably infer which one it is. So, strategically, are they ready? Some not. I think those that have had loyalty schemes, we've seen them double down on them and
Hmm.
also maybe flatten them out a little bit in terms of their value, just from a cost of living crisis perspective. And I think they're probably, they've got first mover advantage. They already kind of understand the power of customer data. And so they are, the grocers, they're launching retail media networks. They're miles ahead.
Yeah.
I think the non-food guys are kind of just looking at marketplaces, that kind of thing, trying to they know they've got the eyeballs. How can I make my site more sticky? How can I start to join up my store, my view of customers in stores with my view of what they do online? I would say the big buzzword in regards to customer data is CDPs, customer data
Hmm.
platforms. Do I need one?
If I had one, what Yeah. would I do? Is
Well,
another.
if you had one, what would you do with it? So,
Well, I think sometimes that question, like there's a question of almost diving to the selection of a CDP ahead of the strategy around what would we do with it. It's
yeah,
kind of like the famous thing with big data. Great, we have all the big data, but what questions are we trying to answer?
exactly. I mean, so we talked about big data. Now we're talking about AI, aren't we,
Hmm.
from that perspective? And I hear retailers all the time say that they're drowning in data. So you raise a very, very good point there. And I would suggest that you're drowning in data because you don't know what to ask of it.
Yeah.
Again, I would say, only ask what you need to know. The most fundamental thing retailers need to know from their customer data is who's my best customer.
Yeah.
What do they look like? Where do they live? How
Hmm.
often do they shop with me? What is it that they like? And then I'm going to use that information to give them more of what they want.
Yeah.
And I'm going to also use that information to run my business better.
And as
Um,
Sorry, I
Go
just
ahead.
we're getting a nod to wrap up shortly, but as a retail tech expert, couldn't possibly let you go without hearing your take on the future of retail in the world of artificial intelligence, which you've just mentioned. I saw a wonderful report recently on River Island's introduction of the smart fitting rooms, which could
Yes.
identify the products a customer brought with them to try on and would suggest via
Yes.
AI alternate sizing, colorways, recommended products
Mm-hmm.
that style with the items, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
What have you seen in the uses of AI that have really piqued your interest recently?
Oh dear. Sorry, that's not a good start to my response, is it? I'm not seeing anything particularly innovative. I'm seeing behind, not custom facing. I'm
Hmm.
seeing so stuff that customers wouldn't necessarily see. But I heard a really good case study of AI being used um, to dynamically put clothing on models, so photography. So through the
Hmm.
pandemic,
Hmm.
samples wouldn't come through quickly enough, or an outfit might come through. The top comes through 2 weeks after the clothing. So if the supplier is sending you photography and you green screen photograph your models, companies like Looklet, they can dynamically put the photography onto the models and make it look like they're actually wearing it and replicate the drape and so on. So generative AI, we've seen all the deep fakes from a photographic perspective. That's being used in quite a clever way to
Yeah,
merchandise
yeah.
to users. I know we're coming up to time, so my vision would be, depending on how much of that on that spectrum of give to get you are, walking into your local supermarket and then going, "Hey Maya, buy the app," because I've got my phone out now, right? The whole point about the book I wrote with Tim Mason, Tesco's, was I can search for the nearest eggs. Google can take me turn by turn to the shop that sells the nearest eggs, but when I get to the shop, I put my phone on. The pandemic's put pay to that. We all are quite happy to snap QR codes and have our phones out in stores. And that's across sectors. What are we doing with it when we've got the phones out now? What are retailers going to do? And I think, applying that reward and recognize, help me find what I'm looking for, make sure it's the thing that I want. It's walk into a supermarket. Hi, Miya, great to see you again. Are you here for a weekly shop? Are you here for? And then I maybe have toggles. Don't show me offers. Don't interrupt me. Do show me wayfinding capabilities. But I'm at the shelf edge and it says the scanning guns already do that. Are you sure we've got buy two get one free? You've not put two in you've only got two in your basket. But AI could go so far as to say, it looks like you're making spaghetti bolognese tonight. Do you know that the Tesco's own brand of Parmesan is half price versus the premium brand that you usually buy? And it's when you start to show value to consumers like that, you're saving me money, you're getting me in and out quickly. You could even say I'm in browsing mode. I'm not in convenience mode. As many questions as you want to ask of the customer to help them guide you into the kind of shopping experience you offer. AI can then dynamically match that from a promotions and personalization perspective and really start to make the mobile a real shopping assistant, both online and in store as far as the shopping experience is concerned. All of that is predicated on some pretty well joined up and AI turbocharged systems.
Yeah, that's a really, really nice use case kind of imagination or suggestion there. It sounds like a really well put together kind of an idea for what could be done with AI in the future.
Yeah, and I think final thing I'd say is, do you want to add an AR filter to that? Do you want me to give you turn by turn where you see the arrows as you walk around the shop? And then, my God, you point your phone at a shelf edge, and you're seeing promotions pop up and stickers and banners. And again, I don't want to scare anybody because I know there's going to be people listening to this thinking that's my idea of fresh hell. But when you think about the fact that we do share so much data with retailers nowadays, and most of us do want to be treated better than a one-time cash-paying anonymous customer, and we have our mobiles out, depending on the use case, the mission, and the type of retailer you are and your brand value, all of these technology components can be used both in store and online to both give customers what they want and to run your business better.
So more of what they want, better run businesses. I kind of wish we booked the studio for a few hours this afternoon to talk to you. Thank you so much for sharing just like scraping the surface of some of the insight. And for those of you who are listening, you can buy Miya's books on Amazon. I would say absolutely give her a follow on Twitter for some great insight into retail tech. And of course, there's your publication, Retail Technology News.
Yeah, thank you so much, guys. No, I've thoroughly enjoyed it. As you said, we only scraped the surface and we're only at the beginning. I think I've been doing it for a long time. Things move slowly, but it's exciting times that we're in now, definitely.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Gare. Thanks, Gordon.
Thanks, Miya.
It's very hot, isn't it, Gordon?
Honestly, to quote Zoolander, Han Solo is so hot right now. It's very hot in the studio. Wasn't that great, though? That was worth sitting in the unair-conditioned studio for, because Miya was fabulous. Some just brilliant insight across the board from the inner workings of Amazon right the way through to some of the developments around tech and really hitting on some of the brilliant basics that we've talked about throughout the season.
And one of the things that I found interesting is the three tenets that she took us through. So the recognize and reward your customer, help them find what they're looking for, and then assure them that it is the right thing. Those three tenets, the way she talked about them as if they were table stakes for online at the as things currently stand. But it's still, I think, a challenge for retailers to get to that level. I certainly think there are retailers that, let's say in the Irish context, where trying to get the loyalty going, it would be such a differentiator for them. And in Miya's mind, these are basically just like hygiene factors.
Mm.
And it's definitely, there's still quite a lot to be done in the world of tech for online.
Oh, completely. Yeah. Inventory, customers, sales and orders. And then on top of that, once that's built and you've got that solid foundation, the brilliant basics, then you can start to build really exciting experiences, but only when you've got those basics locked in. And I suppose the other point is being really clear then on, once you've got that and once you are able to go and build an experience, what's that experience going to be? What are you asking that technology to do before you pick the technology and layer it out?
Yeah, exactly. So you're not going through a Me Too moment, because I suppose, it would be easy to look at a range of tech and say, well, look, we've got all of these solutions. We're not quite sure what our problem is. We'll just layer one of these solutions on top of it because we're sure that there's a problem somewhere. But rather than let's say running to the solution, trying to figure out what you're trying to do in the first instance.
And that can apply on so many levels. I had a really funny conversation this week with somebody, and they were comparing two email platforms. And one of them is very, very common. I'm not going to name any vendors, but one of them is really common in a specific tech stack, and the other one is less so. And he said to me, I'm not going to switch platforms here. And I was like, why not? And he was like, well, the price is pretty much of a muchness, but my team just prefer the UX of platform B over platform A. And I think that's a perfectly valid reason to choose a specific piece of technology if the capabilities are broadly the same, but your team find one easier to use to create better experiences for customers. Then pick the one that the team like to use, because they're going to be sitting in front of it all day.
Well, they have to make it happen.
Exactly. Now, can we, for a second, just talk about dash cards?
You thinking about getting into one and being pushed down a hill?
I just want to go. I just want to have a go of a dash card. Because I actually said, for the benefit of our listeners, secretly, for the benefit of myself. I had no idea what one was, and now I'm like, I'd be putting stuff in, taking stuff out. Give me the 2-for-1s.
Hiding it beside it, kind of like, will we get through it?
I would love to have a go of a dash card.
Hey, I didn't want to mention it, but what is a body buddy? Did I hear that correctly?
I think that might be a software application.
Oh, okay.
Body buddy. It could be like I'm guessing it's going to be like a TrueFit or a Fit Analytics. That kind of thing, but a bit more AR-y.
Yeah.
We were talking about that experience of what I would love it to be, and if anybody from Body Buddy's listening, you maybe want to give us a call. But in my head, what I would love it to be is an AR application that replicates the experience of when you go into a store. And for me, when I go into a menswear store, and the salesperson looks at me and goes, yeah, this is your size and this is what's going to suit you. Notice how I omitted what my actual size was.
Medium, I'm assuming. 32 waist.
Extra small. Extra small, 28 waist. Massive shoulders and big arms.
But that goes back to what Matthew Brown was talking about on the let's say the intimate personal profile. Or even this idea of, let's say, maybe even a digital kind of persona that you can go from store to store and say, okay, well, look, here are my sizes. This is my detail. Filter for me and find only the product that's going to suit me or the product that fits.
Yeah, I think that we can imagine that's the use case. Now let's go and find the technology.
But I really like the idea that Miya had around the use of AI, because it's a really nice, simple, but incredibly useful thing. This, based on what's in your cart, it looks like you're making spaghetti bolognese. Would you like our half-price Parmesan? Like AI it can sound so massively frightening for people. And yes, those are the sorts of leaps that generative AI is going to be able to make.
I love that use case. But then I was kind of then thinking how exciting to have based on what's in your shopping trolley. And if you think about back to episode 1, what Dean said about using loyalty to reward the behaviour that you want, And actually, if you've got AR plus AI, you can start upselling. So, I don't know, it looks like you're making spaghetti bolognese. You've got these tomatoes, but how about these organic Italian fabulous tomatoes that are going to make it taste like so much better? Chef's kiss.
Yes,
that would be a
great
maybe use case to
maybe
make
you
people
land
better.
in a situation where the AI says, "Oh, it looks like you're making cacio e pepe," and you feel all of a sudden kind of like shamed by an AI because you've no idea what it's talking about.
You have to go and Google it.
I don't know. I was going to make like pepper and cheese pasta. So what are you talking about, AI? Stop showing off.
Stop showing off or giving me the correct terms. I love the notions of that.
The Amazon side of things, I don't think we quite like. There was so much to unpack from what the conversation that we had, and there was so much detail in there, and so many, let's say, areas that we covered. But one of the areas I would have liked to get into was the Amazon brand, and whether or not the Amazon brand will carry Amazon into some of the areas it wants to go. Can Amazon food do grocery?
You want Amazon pasta?
Yeah,
is the question.
Or
not pasta from the Amazon.
Or Amazon occasion wear.
Definitely don't want Amazon occasion wear.
Yeah,
I can't imagine that. But I wonder, like, Amazon own brand groceries. So if you think about the supermarkets that we have, like a Dunnes own brand.
Well, I'm thinking of Yellow Pack. I don't know if you had Yellow Pack in the UK. Did you? No.
I guess Tesco Value would have been the equivalent.
Maybe so. We had Yellow Pack and Morris. What was his name? It's a grocery store, Quinsworth. It's gone now, but we had this guy and he'd come. You'd have like the good firelighters, and then you'd have the Yellow Pack, and it was just boxed in a yellow box.
The Yellow Pack.
It was the Yellow Pack.
That was a Quinsworth thing.
It was a Quinsworth thing. Yeah.
Lifestyle Sports used to be a Quinsworth thing.
Oh, really? Didn't know that.
Oh, a long history there. It's probably one for another episode. But yes. Lifestyle Sports originally part of Quinsworth.
But this would be we're really doing a disservice to Amazon here now, but what you're suggesting is potentially
comparing Amazon to
potentially,
Quinsworth.
allegedly. Okay, moving along. But I do feel like if you had a magic wand, sometimes you might say, okay, well, what else could we do with the brand, maybe, in terms of getting into those other areas.
I suppose then, if you think about what Rich was talking about and actually having that kind of like that razor thin targeting, Amazon is from a product perspective, is as far away from the opposite in terms of its proposition, because obviously Amazon is the everything store and it's everything for everyone. I do wonder, how far can you stretch the product adjacency for the Amazon brand? I get it for biscuits. I get it for mice, as in a computer mouse, not as in like a pet mouse. But does it extend into fresh food? Would you trust it?
I definitely trust it. I'm just wondering, would I shop there? And I suppose maybe the fresh, my lettuce and those sorts of vegetables. So the other area, that we kind of touched on, was just the knowledge in the retail sector in terms of leveraging this tech. I feel like I think some of the tech is a good distance further along than I think the ability to use it is at. And maybe Miya mentioned a couple of times, for example, it took COVID before people would pull out their mobile phones and scan QR codes and that sort of thing.